I'm here on the job site with Dale, who's a framing contractor.
Hey, good morning.
Dale traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance for all his business vehicles. We're here where he needs us most.
Yep, they sure are.
We make it easy for him to save on all his insurance needs, all in one place, with coverage that fits his business and bottom line. Oh, I shouldn't have looked down.
It's all right.
We're so far up here.
Look at me. Take a deep breath.
No, I'm good. So good.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. It feels good to Geico.
This podcast is supported by MIDI Health. Are you in midlife? Feeling dismissed, unheard, or just plain tired of the old healthcare system? You're not alone. In fact, even today, 75% of women seeking care for menopause and perimenopause issues are left entirely untreated. But it's time for a change. It's time for MIDI. MIDI's not just a healthcare provider. It's a women's telehealth clinic founded and supported by world-class leaders in women's health. Their clinicians provide one-on-one, face-to-face consultations where they truly listen to your unique needs. They offer a full range of holistic, data-driven solutions that isn't one-size-fits-all care. This is care uniquely tailored for you. At MIDI, you will find that their mission is clear: to help all women thrive in midlife, giving them access to the healthcare they deserve. Because they believe midlife isn't the middle at all. It is the beginning of your second act. Ready to feel your best and write your second act script? Visit joinmidi.com today to book your personalized, insurance-covered virtual visit. That's joinmidi.com. MIDI, the care women deserve.
We've all seen those beautiful charcuterie and crudité boards on social media that'll just blow you away. And they're actually super easy to make at home. And we'll walk you through how to do that with both what ingredients to get and how to style them.
Yay Networks.
A quick note before we dive into today's podcast. If you like what you hear, I would love for you to subscribe to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, wherever you download your podcast. It would also be incredible if you take a minute to rate and review this podcast. Those things do matter, and they really help us. I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. All right, y'all, we are revving up for holiday season, and so I am joined by an expert in charcuterie boards. And so we'll be talking about all types of platters and how to make them actually nourishing for us through the holidays as well. And I'm joined by Kendall Heath. Kendall Heath has Plattered NOLA, based here in New Orleans. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
My aunt actually had first told me about you. You know, I had reached out to her, my Aunt Darlene, who's always like in the know on everything. And she was like, she had told me about you, and then also Ashley Ellis. And so when I had asked, like, two people were like, Kendall is, you know, the best. She's got Plattered NOLA. I reached out to you so maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think it's been since 2020.
Oh, really? Was it holiday that?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it was that year, holiday season.
And so we, quickly, you were so easy to work with. And we, kind of introduced like, hey, what if we did an Eat Fit versions available of charcuterie boards? And you do charcuterie boards, you do crudité boards, and we'll be talking about all the different stuff. And you made it so easy. And you kind of went through like, here's all the different proteins and cheeses and veg and sauces. And you kind of have like a running list of what's Eat Fit.
Yeah, I was really excited to start working with you guys because me and my mom always loved Eat Fit from the beginning. I have vivid memories of listening to your podcast on the way up to our house in North Carolina.
Yay.
So I'm excited to finally be on it.
You're like, hey, Mom.
I'm like, Mom, listen to me on here now. But so I was excited to start working with you guys. And, you kind of guided me in how to make these boards eat fit, what is the appropriate cheeses we can use and things like that. And from there, we kind of branched off. And since those 3 years have passed, there's been new things we've been able to add. which has been great. So you want me to go ahead and kind of start talking through those ingredients?
Yeah. So for our listeners, what we're going to walk through with y'all today is sort of the, like the phrase that comes to my head is like the anatomy of an Eat Fit platter. And as you'll hear Kendall say, there's, platters of all types. And I think some of the most common are the charcuterie or crudité platters where it's like veg only. But what are those ingredients in there that make it Eat Fit? We'll be talking about styling tips. And so this is something that I can definitely up my game on because I'm always like, how do I drape it just so? And it always looks, I feel like a little messy. So, what do I need to do to really up the game on styling? So we'll be talking about what are all the different types of boards and platters and stuff like that you can use, and things that can help it stay neat and clean and not look runny or messy or keep those crackers crisp and all that stuff. We'll talk about some of the pitfalls. And then I didn't realize it, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in a bit, but Kendall offers classes on this, which I think is really cool. So starting out, I think the thing that is really helpful to people is what are those ingredients that are Eat Fit? And when Kendall was saying that we kind of worked together to see what were those, and she mentioned the cheeses, the Eat Fit nutritional criteria, I'll link to it on the episode notes just if you are interested, but it's basically, in short, there's no white starch, no white refined flours, lower sodium, very low or no added sugars, lower animal fats. So it's lean proteins, veg, fruits. And then for any types of sauces, we want to make sure that the sugars are in check, the sodium's in check, and then the cheeses,
Right.
The sodium's in check there. So with that, yeah.
Okay.
Which category do you want to start with?
So we'll start with the cheeses. So some things you'll learn if you take my workshop is one thing that I like to call the 5 C's, which is kind of a technique that we use to build the board. So the 5 C's are cheese. So we'll start with cheese on our ingredients.
Can you walk me through the 5?
I'm going to wonder the 5 C's first. Yeah. So first it's cheese, then it's charcuterie, which is your meats. And then after that, it's your condiments. And then after that is your color, which would be your fruits. And then after that would be your nuts.
Okay.
So the nuts are your crunch.
Crunch. Okay.
Yeah,
I was like, but that's the end.
Yeah. So your crunch. And then the one thing that's not included in that you would normally think of would be your crackers. That's not in the 5 C's because you normally would put your crackers on the side if you're going to make your board in advance so that they don't get soggy. So that's why we don't include them in that 5. But in my workshops, I do include them so you can learn how to put the crackers on the board as well. So
5 or 6.
Yeah. We kind of, it's a loose 5.
So cheese, charcuterie.
Yes.
What was the third?
Condiments,
and then color.
Color, which is your fruit, and then crunch, which is your nuts. So you kind of go from most important to kind of more least important.
Yeah.
So your lower parts, your crunch, are more your filler. You start with your bigger items, your cheese, and your meats are what take up your majority of your space. And then you start filling in with the nuts at the end.
The little accessories for it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Exactly.
So in our 5 C's, I really like the organization of this. All right. So cheeses.
Okay. So cheeses. So the Eat Fit cheeses we like to use are Swiss, burrata, mozzarella, and goat cheese. Those are kind of our 4 go-tos. You can kind of use a range of those types of cheeses, but those are kind of our main ones.
They're a lot lower in sodium, y'all. And so I think that, if you put a good burrata or a good goat cheese, you're not missing it. No one is looking at that and saying, oh, good, I've got a low sodium option here.
Right.
Ever. But they're so much lower, y'all. They're like 75% less sodium than other cheeses. So like ounce for ounce, like an ounce of regular, just say sharp cheddar might be 330 milligrams of sodium. And these cheeses that Kendall's talking about are like 80. So it's like a fraction of it. And so those are the reasons why we reach for those. So something like Swiss cheese or mozzarella, and you can do the fresh mozzarella where it's sliced or the little mozzarella balls.
Yeah, I love to use the mozzarella balls and kind of mix them with some tomatoes, and it's almost like a little fresh caprese on your board, which is great.
And a goat cheese, you would usually use the log, or would you use crumbled, or either?
I normally use the log. And I kind of just style it up with some fresh flowers or some edible flowers, something like that, to just give it a little pop.
With the burrata, that's one that I've struggled with to put that into a board like that. How do you, because the burrata is a little, for those who aren't familiar, it's if you've seen like a ball of cheese and it kind of has like a little bit of an outer coating on the cheese, when you slice it, it's just real oozy.
Yes.
And
so
delicious.
I put the burrata in a ramekin, and then I'll normally put some balsamic glaze on top to kind of give it just a little bit of extra texture. But the reason that I put it in a ramekin is, like you said, it can get a little soggy on everything else around it. So that's how I kind of work with building my boards on anything that has water or oil. So any olives, cornichons, things like that, I always put it in some sort of ramekin so it doesn't get everything else around it soggy.
So on the burrata, when you buy it in the store, for example, it's a ball usually, right. And it has, I don't want to say it's like a harder coating, but it's a little bit of a skin almost.
Yeah, it's actually ricotta stuffed inside of mozzarella. So that's kind of what makes up burrata. So if you can picture that, the mozzarella is kind of the thicker skin on the outside with the kind of creamier ricotta on the inside.
So when you put it in a ramekin, do you put that whole ball or do you put just the creamy goodness inside? Okay.
Yes, because the mozzarella is the delicious part of it as well. Otherwise, you could just use ricotta. But if you want the whole burrata, you go with the outside, exterior, and the inside, which kind of makes it what it is in the burrata.
Creaminess.
Yeah.
I do love a good ricotta too. And so like a whole milk ricotta is one more that we could add to the list because it's also lower sodium. Yeah. It's one that I don't really think about on a board, but it goes really well with like a balsamic or fig or something.
Ricotta is really having a moment right now.
Okay.
Just got back from Chicago and we had a whipped ricotta and I was thinking, am I going to like this? And it was so delicious. It had some pistachios and some honey on top. It was great. So I think that would be a great addition to our boards for sure.
Right. So the cheeses, starting with our 5 C's cheeses, we've got a Swiss, a burrata, a mozzarella, specifically like the fresh mozzarella,
right?
Goat cheese, and then we can add ricotta to that, and I on the ricotta, a lot of times you see part skim, and just for our listeners, I would recommend going with the full fat whole milk ricotta. It's so much. The flavor, the texture, it's just so much more there.
Definitely tastier.
And then so with the ricotta, it'd be in a ramekin. Okay, one more on the visual for the burrata. Is the ramekin like a little bit bigger to kind of give some space so people can kind of like get in it? It's not like a ball sitting on top of a little 4 ounce.
No, you definitely want to use a bigger ramekin so that there's some space for you to dig in, kind of put your knife in there and get it out without it, again, getting everything else around it.
So like a shallow bowl that's a little bit bigger kind of surface area than that, put that ball of burrata in there. Or if it's ricotta, it's just going to be creamy. So you would have that in a little dish anyway. The mozzarella, like Kendall said, the mozzarella balls, or you can use sliced fresh mozzarella that's kind of the rounds. And it would just depend on either what you have in the store or kind of like how you're going to arrange. I guess, as we're talking cheeses, do you want to talk styling tips for some of those others right now, or do we want to come back to styling for all after?
Sure, we can talk about the styling. So like I said, for the burrata, you kind of put the whole ball in there, and then I like to just like give it a little topper with some balsamic glaze, as long as it doesn't have any added sugar.
Right.
I think that's a great option. And then the Swiss, there's a couple different techniques you can use to cut it. You can do cubes. You can do kind of longer pieces, but I always recommend with harder cheeses, cutting the cheese and not putting a whole block on there so that people can easily grab the cheeses. And that's something else I talk about in my workshop is which cheeses do you want to cut and which ones do you want to leave whole. So those harder cheeses, I always like to cut so that you don't have everybody trying to dig in there. And half the time it's left full because it's too hard. It's too hard to get.
Right. You're talking to somebody. Yeah. You have to put like a lot of muscle into like, jamming it in there. And then, so when you're, if you do have like those harder cheeses, almost cutting it into where it's like almost like flaked to where it's.
Yeah, I like to call it rustic crumbles. That's kind of my little go-to line. So a lot of these cheeses, you don't get a perfect asymmetrical cut on it. So if you just make these little crumbles, which I also teach in my workshop, how you like make these crumbles, it kind of makes it so it's intentional,
Right.
instead of just, kind of flakes around the board.
So something that would be like maybe a manchego or like a Parmigiano Reggiano or something like that. Then instead of having just that whole block of harder cheese, we would have
absolutely.
it with that. Is it something that you can give a description, even though we're not able to show it, of how you make your rustic crumble?
So I use the rustic crumble for the cheeses that are more crumbly.
Right.
So what you do is you stick your knife in kind of the end, and then you twist it.
Oh.
And and it makes these little pieces that are crumbly. And from there, you just keep doing that all the way around.
Like a regular butter knife,
Yeah,
or like a wider cheese
I
knife?
use a paring knife.
Okay.
I just find that it works well
Yeah.
for most of the items on the cheese board.
Okay.
So it's easy to work with your vegetables, but also good to work with for your cheeses.
Okay.
So that's kind of my go-to. And it's, it's easy to work with, and it's not super big where you're like worried about chopping your hand off, anything like that.
And then you just kind of do the twist, and some of them are going to be bigger. So then you break
so then
those.
you could just break those
Yeah.
up. And then I like to put them together in what I like to call a hill. So you're kind of creating volume instead of having everything lay flat, which is what kind of we talked about, like a faux pas.
Right.
When you see cheese boards is when you just like take the meats out of the package and put them flat on the board. Same with like a slice of cheese sort of thing where it's just flat. You want to kind of create this volume on your board with what I like to call a hill. So you kind of put it together in like a little corner and build it up a little bit.
So a hill of our rustic crumble.
Yep.
When it's more of those harder cheeses. And then we talked about what to do with the softer ones. That's really good, because I think I've noticed when we do a harder cheese, because I do love like a Parmigiano Reggiano, and y'all, for our listeners, those cheeses are all amazing. If you invite me to your party and you have those, it doesn't bother me that they're a higher sodium cheese. Personally, I eat those more than anything. And, but for someone, when we're looking at Eat Fit, the reason we have this criteria are for people who do need to watch their sodium intake, people who do need to watch sugar, white starches. So the reason Kendall's mentioning those 5 cheeses, because they're lower sodium, doesn't mean that's all you can or quote should use. I love those good harder cheeses. A lot of times they'll kind of have those crystalline salt granules.
Those are my favorite too.
Yeah.
But it's about balance.
Exactly.
If you don't eat the whole block of it and you just are maybe eating a few bites, and then you're eating a few bites
Right.
of something else with lower sodium,
Exactly.
kind of
Totally.
evens out.
So when I've put those out at I think about the holiday party we had last year, I did do the crumble like that. Didn't make a hill, which I really think that's cool.
Makes all the difference.
But by crumbling, it went. I mean, they like wiped it out versus the cheeses that were not done like that. They were almost untouched.
It's too much effort.
Yeah. Okay.
You want to make it easy for your guest.
On the same note of cheese, we've noticed a lot of times like a blue cheese, I love them. And I think people do it at a party. We've noticed they're untouched.
I never add them to my boards because it's such a, kind of cheese that some people love and some people hate. So I feel like it's better to just be on the safe side and not add it. My father-in-law, he loves it. So if I make a board for him,
Right.
I'm putting it on there for sure. But for a big party, it's easier just leave it off because I think it turns some people off.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Even that it's on the board,
Right.
So.
Yeah. We've thought it's really, and I mean, we've been happy with it because we're like, well, we love it. It's one of
Right.
our favorites and we'll have it for later. But it's been noticeable that's been the untouched has been a blue or something like that.
It's a funky cheese. So if you're not used to that, it's a different flavor profile and something that you kind of got to get used to. It's more of an acquired taste.
And I guess at a party too, people are talking, maybe they're afraid of like, carrying around that blue cheese scent with them, if they're like in closer quarters. Okay. So cheese being our first C, charcuterie.
Yes. So next is charcuterie. And this is kind of the area where you would think it might be a little harder to meet the Eat Fit guidelines, but it's really, there's some good options. So you can add prosciutto, which is one of the main options for a charcuterie board. And if you don't know what makes a charcuterie board is the meats, because that's the charcuterie. But so that's the first one, which would be the prosciutto.
Super, super thin. And so people were like, but wait, it's got so much salt. It does, but also it's so very thin that the amount of animal fats or salt you're going to get in a slice is I guess controlled because it's such a thin amount.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another one that we like to use is smoked salmon. So I especially like those on my brunch boards, but it works well, for any type of charcuterie board. And then lastly, they have turkey summer sausage, which is a kind of a good alternative that you can use instead of just like a regular salami, a thick salami. You can use that turkey summer sausage, which gives you that same flavor profile, but with just a little bit of that lower fat.
It's chilled. It's not like normal sausage, but it's called that. But it's more like a salami type.
Yeah, it's kind of the whole salami, like you would get like a Columbus type brand of salami sort of thing, but it's the turkey summer sausage. They specifically sell that one at Trader Joe's.
Okay, cool.
So it's super easy to get there, and then you just kind of slice it thin. And it's easy to grab, and it's another really good meat option.
Another that we could add to the list is like a copa. Yeah. So that would be, and it's often I find like even a little bit leaner than something like a prosciutto.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Our friend who's from New Jersey, she calls prosciutto prosciutto.
Yep.
And then she calls mozzarella mozzarella.
Well, that's the Sopranos.
So we like jokingly, like in our household, we call it prosciutto. And I like almost found myself. So yes, the prosciutto. The prosciutto, the copa, the smoked salmon, the summer turkey sausage, all of those would be things that could be the charcuterie element of it.
Right.
And then I guess while we're kind of going on each of these, talk to me about styling for that. The prosciutto is where I'm like, I peel it off and, it's separated with the thin little paper. It's impossible to get it to come off in one piece. And then I just sort of like cluster it, but it just looks like
I got a trick for you.
Pawed it. Okay.
Yeah. So when I first started, I hated it. It was the worst thing to work with ever. But I have a trick that makes your life 100 times better. You put it in the freezer.
Oh, really?
For about 5 to 10 minutes before you start working with it. And it helps it firm up. So it's so much easier to pull off the paper.
Okay.
It's like,
and it comes off in a full sheet.
Yeah. And another trick that I have with it is instead of pulling the prosciutto from the paper, you want to pull the paper. So I show all of this in my workshop too. And it's a lot easier to see, visualize it than to hear it. But if you pull it from the paper, it comes off so much easier, especially when it's super cold. It's a game changer.
Like if you have a sticker, you're taking the back off the sticker.
Right. Exactly. Just like that.
Interesting. Okay.
It's just little things that you would have never thought of. But, at the beginning when I started dealing with prosciutto, I was like, how am I supposed to style this?
Right.
It's too hard it just comes off in a clump.
It's just manhandled.
Right.
Yeah.
And now it's so much easier.
Okay.
And what I like to do with it is called a prosciutto ribbon. So you kind of fold the bottom underneath. And so you create like a little flat layer on the bottom. So it's easier to work with and more of a perfect line. And then you kind of fold it back and forth. And then you pinch it at the bottom. And that makes this beautiful prosciutto ribbon. And it comes out super pretty. And then you just kind of poof it out at the end. And then once you put it on the board, you can't touch it. Because once it warms up, that's when it gets all funky again. And it gets super hard to deal with. So I say, once you put it on there, leave it. It'll look as good,
So
as you can imagine.
For anyone who is like looking to up your game on like styling your boards, what Kendall just described is like the reason to take the class. Because
absolutely.
On creating a rustic crumble, I get it. I'll like jab it with a sharp knife, twist it, and I'll create a crumble. But how you just described that ribbon, I'm like, ooh, that sounds so pretty and so much better than the like little manhandled pile up and creating. But it's also really hard to visualize. And so having that hands-on with people is going to be key.
Yeah.
Okay. So would that same ribbon approach apply also to something like the others, or how would you do something like
It works kind of well also with the smoked salmon. The smoked salmon is a little harder to deal with because it's not in such perfect pieces.
Right.
But I can kind of still make somewhat of ribbons out of those. I'll also do just kind of like a twirl around my finger and make kind of a little circle out of it.
Do you actually twirl it around your finger, or do you kind of turn it into itself? Like
I'll twirl it around my finger and then kind of pull it off.
Interesting.
So that it creates this circle effect on the board. And that way it kind of holds its shape versus just like turning it around and bunching it up. I find bunching it up kind of creates problems with all of the meats because then they just kind of look jumbled.
Right. That's what mine looks like. Right. I mean, they taste good, but they're not pretty.
I mean, and that's what we talked about before. It's about having fun. If it doesn't look perfect, it's okay.
People are right. Like, let the night go on long enough and people are going to like find their way through it. What about my niece Katie makes it like a little rosette?
Yes. So that's another thing that I teach in my class. We do salami roses and salami rivers. So those are super fun techniques to learn. We use a ramekin to make the roses, but I know a lot of people like to use the wine glass, and that's another fun technique. So there's all these different techniques you can use to style your meats and your cheeses. And that's, different things that we talk about throughout the workshop and that I, teach.
Do you like layer them into it?
Yes. So you kind of, which is a really cool,
we're doing our best to talk through it, y'all, for our listeners. But I know all it does is tease us and want to know more. Right. But I like still hearing it.
So what I do is I take these small, almost like Jello shot cups, and I make petals on the outside. So you have, half of your salami on the inside and half on the outside, and you kind of do 4 or 5, and you make these petals. And then you take 4 or 5 more and you lay them flat, and then you fold them, and then you kind of twirl them in, and you make a bud that you place into the inside, and it makes these really beautiful roses, and they come out so pretty. Everyone is so impressed by the end of the class. They can't even believe that they
executed this. Right.
And it's so easy. You just got to learn it once,
It's got to be like the person who's going to take that first bite of that rose, though, like the first petal out of there. They're like,
you can't even worry about it.
Yeah. But I'm sure the people who make it are like a little anxious at first, like, oh, it's so pretty, I don't want to eat it. But then they get over it.
Yeah.
And then once they know how to do it, it's like, yeah, I can just make another.
Right.
Yeah.
It's easy enough, and you want the people to enjoy the board. So that's what it's about. Go ahead and grab it. It's not going to be the end of the world if the rose isn't intact anymore.
And we're walking y'all through the 5 C's of building your boards and keeping it eat fit, and the ingredients and where to find them and the different styling tips Kendall has. But if you're listening to it and you're thinking you just wouldn't want to take the time for that, that's why she makes these, you know? So that's why Plattered NOLA is there, that you can say either you're going to go to the store and buy these ingredients and figure it out yourself and style it yourself, or order it from Kendall. And I'll say too, by the time you go to the store and buy all the ingredients, it's not inexpensive to create
buy
your own.
Multiple bags of nuts.
Yes.
And then all these different types of cheeses. You're not going to use the whole bag of nuts.
Right.
But it's going to end up costing you $100 to make this tiny board because you have to buy a whole bag.
Exactly. So keeping that in mind, like knowing that's an option with Plattered NOLA. And then if you're outside of the greater New Orleans area, of course, there's, find others that are near you. And if you're like, but I really want the Eat Fit version, you can still, people can customize, Right. So if you're if you're in the greater New Orleans area, reach out to Kendall. We're going to have her email, her Instagram, and her Facebook all in the episode notes. And then we'll also just say it too. I'll just say it right now since we're talking about it, but it's platterednola@gmail.com. But if you're outside of it and you're just kind of like hearing some of the things we say, you could request this for your own board if you're other places. Okay, so we talked 5 C's. We've got cheese. We've got charcuterie. Is there anything else in the charcuterie part to share?
I think that about covers it as far as the Eat Fit, guidelines from what I understand.
And then condiments is next?
Yeah, condiments. Okay. So I know we're a little more limited on condiments because a lot of them have sugar.
Right.
So what we have found is we want to look for ones that are made only from fruit. So 100% fruit based.
If it's like a preserve or something.
Yeah, if it's a preserve. So I found one brand that I know we talked about a while back, St. Dalfor, and it was 100% from fruit, but they sell it at Whole Foods, and they have apricot, peach, orange, 4 fruits, blueberries. So every type you could want, but you just gotta, kind of make sure you're limiting how much you are using. So you don't want to cover everything in the jam. But other options would be mustard. So, a whole grain mustard is kind of the perfect option for an Eat Fit board because it pairs so well with cheese. And it's also a great Eat Fit option, but it's also so gorgeous on a board. Those tiny little mustard seeds, it's it doesn't get much prettier than that.
How do you put that in like its little vessel?
Yes,
Or okay.
I'd have that in kind of a little smaller ramekin. Because like we said before, you don't want everything else around it getting soggy. So again, it's anything that's water or oil based. So jams, things like that, you'd always want to keep in a ramekin. And I know we kind of talked about this before with the condiments. I personally, if you can find them, I like to use those 1 ounce little jars with the top so that if you're bringing it to a friend's house or something like that, it's contained, it's not going to spill all over the plates. So those are kind of my favorite.
And Kendall and I were talking about it before we started the podcast, and she was like, like the little 1 ounce, the little jams or jellies like that are at World Market or a place like that. Or like I was saying, the ones that are on like the hotel tray. And so you may tuck it away even if like, or like a room service. I always see them like if you're going down the hotel, it's like when people put their tray out.
Yeah, from breakfast.
A lot of times they're not even touched. Not that you're going to steal people off. We're not recommending that, but those types to give you the visual of what we're talking about. Those little containers, or even like any kind of like tiny jar, any kind of tiny reusable you could do.
Yeah, I think they sell some at Target that you could put your own things in if you wanted. I know Martin sells some. So there's multiple different places you can get them, even Amazon.
And then while Kendall and I are doing this podcast, I have a bunch of the pottery and the sculpture that I do because we have a lot of wedding gifts. So Kendall's like surrounded by.
Those are the perfect vessels for everything we're talking about.
And so there's these little, they're little bowls that actually sell them at Home Alone. And they, have love inside of some, NOLA inside of some, but people use them for jewelry, or, that people use it like for like paper clips or stuff. So anything that you have that's that size that like you're using for like a little earring catch or like paper clips or something, and it's nice looking also, like it's that size that we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. That's the perfect vessel for, a little mustard, because you don't need this big old thing that's taking up the whole board. You just need a little bit. People aren't going to use a ton. So just enough for them to grab a little bit to add to their bite.
And then what about other sauces, spreads that kind of can be in that condiment space?
So one thing we haven't really talked about is the crudités. So the crudités have kind of really taken off. So if anyone doesn't know, a crudité is basically a vegetable board. So those have really been kind of added to every order I've had lately. And so with those, I have all the vegetables on the outside, and then I have the dips on the inside. So kind of with that, there's all different kinds of dips that you can use. You
can get creamier and stuff like that.
You can we do hummus, Greek yogurt dips, dressings. So all those different types of dips really work well with those crudités. And it's kind of something different to offer your guest, where they're still getting, something healthy, but also something really yummy.
Like Trader Joe's has the green goddess dressing, and that looks cool. It's also really nutritious. There's like all good ingredients in it, and it adds like that huge pop of color in there.
That green is such a huge pop of color. And one thing that I do on my crudités, which I find is really fun, is if I can find the red cabbage, I use the red cabbage and I hollow it out and I add the dips inside the red cabbage. So a red cabbage with the green goddess dressing is just a dream come true with the colors. So pretty.
Right. And it's something that it's one extra step, but it's not a giant step.
No, not at all. Not at all. You're going to have to find a bowl to use anyways.
Right.
So if you can get your hands on some red cabbage, I definitely recommend it.
And so condiments being, if you're using jams or jellies, looking for those that are just naturally fruits only. The grainy kind of coarse mustards, like she said, balsamic vinegars, balsamic reductions can work well over cheeses and stuff like that as the condiments. A lot of the creamy dips or dressings, Greek yogurt based, you can find a lot of them pre-done. Trader Joe's has a great selection in that area.
Yeah, we have kind of a whole list of ones from Trader Joe's that are really good options. As far as the dips, they have everything but the bagel yogurt. The garlic spread is, I know, a fan favorite of anyone who shops at Trader Joe's, and that goes really, really well with vegetables. So it's a good vessel to dip. vegan buffalo dip. A lot of the vegan options work really well. So the vegan creamy dill dressing and the vegan Caesar. And then they also have the Greek yogurt spinach dip, which is another really yummy Greek yogurt option. And then you can also just use Greek yogurt and like the ranch seasoning.
Right. Like make your own version.
Right.
And so any dips that you typically make that are a spinach dip or a creamy dip, use Greek yogurt, just like Kendall said, and just use that instead of your sour cream or your mayonnaise. And just like I was saying earlier with the ricotta, my preference is full fat. Same with the Greek yogurt. If you're going to be making it from scratch, I would just ask you, don't go with the fat-free. I either would say the 2% Greek yogurt, or even preferred for me from a texture standpoint is the full fat. And again, you're not using that much of it whenever you're using it as a dip, but the texture of it is just so much better.
Yeah. And for these crudités, you're eating it with vegetables. So, it's a good balance there.
Right. Good point. And so kind of going back to that styling on that. So on a crudité type platter, you mentioned a red cabbage, hollowing that out. I've seen it also like a orange pepper or a red pepper.
So another vessel you can use to hold your dips would be peppers, or if you just have bowls laying around, you can use those too. But I can also get into some of the vegetables that I use in the crudité if you want. So
any others that are big are great for holding that sauce or that dip?
Those are kind of the main ones that I've found.
Because they hold. They're
big enough to hold, and they're strong enough to kind of not have everything melt through.
Right. But not so big.
Yeah.
They're not taking over.
Exactly. So those are kind of the two that I find work best. So when I build these crudités, I start with the 2 bowls in the middle of the cabbage, or, your bell peppers. You'd probably want a few more since they're a little smaller. And what I do is I start building by making layers. So I'll start with a layer of celery, and then I'll do a layer of cucumber, and then a layer of zucchini, and then carrots, and then celery. I said celery already, cauliflower. And then after that, I kind of put on the smaller things like the smaller cucumbers, the corn, the little tomatoes, radishes, things like that kind of just like top it off at the end. And the colors that come together are so beautiful. So I also try to look for like tricolored carrots, and then tricolored cauliflower to kind of add some different
cauliflower.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting.
Right. It comes out so beautiful at the end. Every time I bring in a crudité, everyone is always blown away because of the different colors. And at the end of the day, it's just vegetables.
Right.
But if you look for things beyond just the white and the green, it really brings a pop of color.
So when you say you kind of layer it, do you do that all over the board?
Yes. So I kind of do it around in those layers around the whole board, and I do each layer, and then as you're going through, it kind of, and so I'll have to tuck in the carrots once I get there. And once I get to the cauliflower, you'll have to start tucking in. And it just looks gorgeous. So
and then you're using that to kind of fill the space.
Exactly.
And so if you usually, I think you said you have like 2 vessels that have some sort of a sauce or dip inside.
Yes. Normally I do 2 or 3, depending on the size of the board. If it's a large board, then you might need 3, but generally 2 dips is pretty good for a plat.
And 2 preferable to 1 to just give options.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I wouldn't normally just do 1 just in case, somebody is not a fan of spinach dip or something like that. They have multiple options there.
So you may have, like you said, a Greek yogurt based spinach dip in one, and you may have a green goddess dressing in the other, or something like that gives kind of 2, or a hummus in the other, a beet hummus that could give like beautiful color.
Yes. I almost always do a hummus and then some sort of like more creamy dip.
Which do you find goes more?
I'd say the hummus is the easiest option because I feel like it's friendly to almost everyone. Whereas all the other options, you're never really sure if people are going to like them or not. So I feel like a hummus is a good go-to.
And if someone's dairy free or whatever it is, and even if they're like, oh, I don't have dairy or can't have dairy for whatever reasons, or choose not to, even if that dip is a vegan product and doesn't contain dairy, but maybe they can't tell or they don't know. So, but something like hummus, they're pretty sure.
Exactly.
It's pretty straightforward. So we've had our cheeses, our charcuterie, our condiments and color. I think we talked through those. What about how you cut the vegetables?
So I like to cut the vegetables in kind of a skinnier, longer effect so that I can lay them out. And then we blanch them. You know, any vegetable that you would normally cook, we blanch.
So
that
your
it's-
broccoli,
yeah.
cauliflowers,
Right. Those type of
carrots too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate that because when you don't, they kind of like those carrots get like that white, dry coating on it.
Right. And they get a little kind of bitter when they're
Yeah.
raw. So it helps to just kind of make them have a better overall flavor profile.
And it keeps the colors vivid.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is, which blows everybody away.
Right.
About the crudité.
Right. And it's helping with the softness a little bit. It just makes it better all around, but doesn't take a big extra step.
Right.
Do you do them each separately or do you
Yeah.
blanch them all in one?
Each separately because you kind of want them to keep that color. That's kind of one of the,
Right.
driving factors of that crudité. So you want them to keep their specific color. So we blanch them each separately.
Right. And then on slicing, so you said your most populars are carrots. Would you use whole carrots and slice them or more baby carrots?
I use the whole longer tricolor carrots. So I get specifically the ones, not the huge ones, but the medium sized ones. So not baby carrots, but they still kind of have that little green stem. So they look super pretty, but they're not taking over the whole board.
But the whole thing would be like you would grab one little carrot and that would be sort of like,
Right.
Okay.
And it's kind of the perfect amount where you can dip and, get it in
Right.
your mouth, but it's not, this big old
Right.
carrot.
Yes. And then, so carrots, cauliflower, you would keep it florets, or broccoli, you would keep it the florets.
Right.
And then what are some of the others? What about zucchini or squash?
So zucchini, I like to buy the baby ones if they have them. But if not, I still kind of keep them the longer version. And then I'll just put them farther back. And, they just create that good base for the crudités.
And do you peel them or no?
No,
Okay. And then squash.
I haven't used too much squash besides zucchini. But I think that would be something
Yeah.
that could definitely be used.
It can be a little softer. So I didn't know about that. That's why I was asking
Yeah.
one of those. And then on peppers, do you do like red peppers, yellow
Yes,
peppers?
so I love the mixed peppers. I use the mini ones, but if you're going to use the bigger ones, you'd kind of more want to use them as a vessel for your dips.
Okay. And you prefer the mini ones because they're easier to just...
Yeah, they're easier to pick up for your guest. They can dip them. If you're going to use the bigger ones, you're going to slice them.
Right.
The mini ones we just slice in half.
Okay.
And we show the inside so you can kind of see that dimension. Whereas strips would be great too. That's would be another option as well.
That's what I've usually done is strips like that. But I think the minis, they feel more approachable.
Yeah.
If they're like more finger food at a party, if you're trying not to have like a lot going on that you're like reaching
you
and
can just
dipping and
easily
stuff.
grab it and you can get a good amount of dip on there so you don't have to be like going back over and over again.
Right. And then like fearing or like you're not double dipping, but you feel like it might look like you are,
Yeah.
you're using the other side of it. Any other vegetables that are like maybe unexpected that people aren't using enough on these?
Radishes are one that I kind of said,
They're so beautiful
they're
too.
so beautiful. They just add a really pretty pop of color. So I really like to add those. And I feel like the flavor profile isn't super overwhelming. So you can really taste the dips with the radishes. I just think that's something that somebody doesn't really think about.
Right.
And they're not in just a standard, veggie tray that you
Right.
would get.
Right.
So that's something that we really like to use.
Any others like it? Are you doing any that you're like grilling or roasting ahead of time, like asparagus or eggplant usually, or do you do more of just one?
I've seen other people use asparagus, and I think that would be a fine option. It's just I don't like to mix the hot and cold, and then once you kind of heat up the asparagus and then chill it, it's just kind of a lot of different textures there. I feel like it can get a little gummy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I don't use asparagus, and kind of I feel like eggplant could be super mushy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I don't use that one, but I love eggplant in
Right.
general. So if you wanted to use eggplant, I'd probably make a dip out of it.
Yeah. Good point. Doing like a baba ganoush
Yeah.
type or something. And then, so we talked cheeses, charcuterie, condiments, color. And
So
we're-
color would be our fruit.
Mhm. Okay.
So I mean, for Eat Fit NOLA board, you want to go crazy with the fruit. You can use, strawberries, blackberries, anything that's in season. If you can find figs, figs are one of my favorite things to have on boards. They were just in season. I think I haven't been able to find them this past week, so I think they might be going out, but I just try to keep my eye out for them.
Trader Joe's also has some dried figs that don't have sugar added.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So with the color too is also the dried fruits. Another dried fruit that I really like from Trader Joe's is the dried mandarins. Dried fruit is always the last thing to go on a board, but the dried mandarins are actually really delicious.
And with that, just look at the label, y'all, because a lot of times dried fruit has added sugar. It's so much sweeter than what it actually naturally is. So what Kendall's talking about is specifically the dried fruits that don't have any added sugar. And you can't tell from the label because it'll just, if you're looking at just the sugar, but you just turn it over and look at the ingredients and it'll just say figs or whatever.
Right. And Trader Joe's is really good with that. A lot of their dried fruits is just fruit.
Yeah.
So it's a good place to look. And Whole Foods as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And so our color, all those veg give us color, and then the fruits, of course. Is there any fruit that you would say like steer clear of because it's just hard to eat or mushy or?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't put bananas on a board. That's kind of, you kind of more when it sticks to the berries, things like that. Trying to think of what else I wouldn't normally use.
What about apples or pears with the browning effect of that?
Right. So you can use, apples go so well with cheese,
right?
But you can use some lime juice or lemon juice and that really helps. But on my boards, I don't put apples just because they do brown.
Well, and it could be a little while before it's served.
Right. And if you don't care so much about presentation, then go ahead and definitely use apples because it's a great flavor profile together. But if you're really trying to pay attention to what your board looks like, then I would,
And if you're going to try the lemon juice or lime juice, would you say like toss it through there or just like?
Yeah, you can just squeeze it on top, especially because you're going to want to style it a little bit. I'd probably, cut them in little slices and then fan them out.
Right.
So I just squeeze it on there at the end to kind of hopefully
delay the browning. Yeah, it's still going to brown, but then delaying that. Any others that you would say are like your favorites to add or what we would want to steer clear of?
So figs are my number one favorite.
Yeah.
I always try to look for what's seasonal.
Yeah.
So right now, blood oranges I think are about to come in season. I love to do those. One thing we learn in my class is how to make a kiwi star. So you can also make the stars out of the blood oranges, which come out beautiful. But you can do that with like almost any round fruit. So regular oranges, navel oranges, those type of thing you can use year round.
And the blood oranges are so beautiful.
Right.
Yeah. So what's seasonal? And then also as you're talking, I'm hearing like the vivid colors.
Right. So when I make my board, we talk through, we want to kind of create volume and then you want to think about color. So you want to make sure you have all the different colors spread out through your board. And then you want to make sure that there's no space showing throughout your board because that's kind of what makes these boards what they are, as opposed to just a regular board you would get at, a little restaurant where they throw some meat and cheeses on there. These specific type of boards are you fill in everything and you think about where the colors are going to be.
Right. It's like artistic placement of it all.
Absolutely.
And the last is going to be crunch.
Yes. So crunch is the nuts. So I love the nuts at Trader Joe's. I know I sound like a Trader Joe's ad. I always say that, but it's just, they have great options and everyone can shop there if you have it in your city. But I know one we recently talked about was sesame, honey, almonds, and cashews. They are the best. They taste so delicious.
And hardly any sugar.
Yeah. And I know I was a little concerned. I was like, oh, it has honey. And you were like, but it's, no one's going to eat. Yeah.
Right.
And then you want to look for, with everything else, kind of the lightly salted. So the lightly salted almonds, cashews, pecans, things like that, or no salt, you kind of want to look for those options as opposed to the fully salted options.
What about with almonds? Is it important to you if they're like, I don't know, blanched or they don't have the skin on them, or does that matter to you either way?
So I personally like to use the Marcona almonds. They're a Spanish almond. They're a little sweeter. So you'll look at them. They don't have any skin on them. They're a little lighter in color and They're super delicious. And I find that they go really well with the cheese board because they go well with almost all flavors. They sell some at Trader Joe's that are rosemary.
I was just going to say that. It's so amazing. Good. Yeah.
They're so delicious. And a board with rosemary and Marcona almonds, it's a great combo.
Right. But that was some like also on there, like the ricotta or burrata with like, not that they go together, but the balsamic, like those are just like some of my favorite things all paired together. Yeah. And then other things for crunch.
So I guess crackers we can put in that category. So we just found out it's a super seed cracker that they just started selling at Trader Joe's. So that's a really good option.
They're like the Mary's Gone crackers. It's like the Trader. In fact, they're almost exactly like it. You know, with that, I'm like, I wonder if it is. And it's just like labeled differently. But if y'all are familiar with Mary's Gone crackers from a place like Whole Foods, this is very similar. And it's called...
I think it was called Super Seed.
Super Seed, yeah. And they're like a quinoa based, like super crunchy cracker. And then we've also done things like the little cheese, like cheese wisp, or like the little cheese.
Yeah, the little Parmesan crisps, which you can get at any grocery store, but they sell them at Trader Joe's or Costco or things like that. Those are really great because it's cheese, you know, so it's really good. And you can just eat those by themselves. You don't even have to add any cheese to it.
And with those, you recommend either having them separately, like in a separate dish, so it doesn't kind of get all in the middle of the board.
I actually put those right on there as long as they're not touching anything watery, which anything watery would really be in a ramekin. So I find that they're fine, unless you're making it for the next day.
Right.
So for crackers, I'll put them on if I'm serving immediately. If I'm going to be serving it the next day, then I like to, you know, use a little bowl on the side and make a little cracker board.
Or add them to the top of it right before you're serving it.
Yes. Leave some space and add it in right before.
Because even if you don't have it touching something that's like liquid, if it's just there next to it'll absorb and get a little bit soggy.
Right.
So having it separate. And when someone's ordering a board from you, like when we have, you send that over separately. Like whatever's that cracker or the cheese crisp we were talking about, like you've got that separate that we could then later add onto it. Or
if it's going to be for a later day. If I made it for you that day and I'm bringing it to you that day, then it's going to be on the same board. But I normally try to make them the same day. It's only if you like requested, you know, you can only get the board the day before. Then I'll make a board on the side of crackers so that you can, you know, keep it out the fridge, keep that all fresh.
And you deliver people aren't picking them up from you?
People pick it up and I deliver.
Yeah.
So we have both options.
Super convenient.
Yes.
Okay, so we covered our 5 C's, y'all: the cheese, the charcuterie, the condiments, the color, and the crunch. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, Kendall, is the actual board itself. You know, so we have several different ones. We have one that is a cutting board that our friend's dad made, and it's beautiful. And then we use that often. And then we use another board. It's sort of like, it's almost like a old weathered like barge board that our friend Sean Wilkerson made. And then I have one that's sort of like, it's like a piece of stone. It's like a real flat piece of stone that has some like gold trim on it. And so those are sort of my 3 go-tos.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's like a lot of other things that could be a vessel for someone to do their platter on that they already have, that they don't have to buy something special.
So my recommendation is always to use something with a lip if possible, because that keeps everything in, especially with these boards where you're overflowing everything, you're building everything up. So like a tray.
Right.
A tray is always kind of my go-to because it has that lip. So you can transport it. When people are grabbing it, there's not everything falling off the side. So I always kind of say my favorite options are anything with a lip.
Like a tray that you would think about, like you're going to put a plate on it and you're going to bring a tray, like a breakfast, and who really has breakfast in bed on the regular, but
right.
like a tray that you would have for a breakfast in bed with like a little bit of like a 1-inch lip around it.
Those are my favorite, personally.
But a lot of times someone is not thinking to actually place the food directly into that.
Right.
They're using that tray to carry other plates.
Yeah. Okay. And you can just put some parchment paper down, make sure it's food safe that way. But that's kind of always been my go-to. I've found, you know, with my extra large boards, they don't have a lip because it's almost impossible to find a board that big with a lip. And it's just, you know, I find things fall off the side because you're building everything up. So it's inevitable. But if you have that option, then I'd go for it.
Right.
But, you know, most people have cutting boards, things like that. Right. And those work really well too. They're beautiful. You kind of use the same technique.
Right.
It's
You
just
just
a
may
different
need to be a
option.
little careful about how close
Yeah.
to get to the edge or something like that.
Exactly. Just bring everything in a little bit more.
Right. Or maybe if you have like your sauces in the little vessels, like maybe you have those around the edge a little bit.
Yeah.
Versus
Oh,
the
and
stuff
I'll
that's
put,
rolling.
kind of things that might not fall off on the edge. So like a brie
Yeah.
that, kind of, or a port salut or something like that. I know those aren't necessarily like our Eat Fit favorite
Right.
cheeses, but something that has that kind of edge that's not going to fall right off.
Right. It sort of anchors it and gives like a built-in edge. Anything else that we didn't talk through? We talked about kind of the anatomy of it, the styling tips. You kind of guided us through like what are the things we want to avoid. The classes, I want to say the classes are at NOLA Boards. So y'all who are local, NOLA Boards they make beautiful handmade boards. I was talking about our friend's dad who makes these. He's not with NOLA Boards, but they create these beautiful boards. It is on Magazine Street, and Kendall hosts classes there once a month. It is typically on Thursdays from 6:30 to 8:30.
Yep, that's correct.
And so you can also either email Kendall or see it on her Instagram or Facebook on like the different like when the next date is as you're hearing it. And the classes are $125.
Yes.
Included in that. So what you're going to walk away with though is like all the visuals that like she only touched on some of it with us, but there's like way more that's going to be covered in there. And I know that y'all were with me hearing it, that like we can hear it and we can kind of guess our way through it, but that would be like a lot more that we would pick up if you're like there in person. And you get a board. So you get one of those beautiful NOLA boards,
The best deal.
which is like a $70 value.
Yeah.
You get all that education from Kendall, and you're walking away with your board that you created with all those ingredients and your charcuterie or crudité that you made.
Yeah. So you're getting the knowledge of the class, you're getting all the ingredients to make your board.
Making your board.
Right. And the board that we made for the class is a custom made board that you only can get at the class, and it has a lip.
Oh, that's amazing. Like I love that they did that with you too.
Yeah.
That's
Really
spectacular. So treat yourself to that. I think that that's something too, that if you're like, maybe it feels like a splurge to do something like that. Y'all, holidays are here. Like put it on your list.
Right.
And
And we're doing gift cards for classes now too. So that's a really good gift. But it's a fun night out where you're learning a skill as well. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
And you do it for different groups, like different school groups or mom groups from schools or work groups, like friend groups. Like, so there's Thursdays once a month, but if you've got a group who wants to do it, you can customize it for that too.
Yeah, the groups are really fun. If you can get about 8 people together and, you have a location, or we can do it at NOLA Boards, but it's just a fun way to get everybody together. It's something different than just doing, a regular dinner every day, every year for the holidays. It's something different and something fun.
Creative.
And great. You're using your creative juices. So we've had a lot of fun different groups do that, and it's been a really big success.
I love it. Is there anything that we haven't covered that we should share? I just looked down at our time, our timer. It is almost an hour we've been talking about this. I was like, oh, we might talk for 30 minutes. But this is like, there's so much to cover, and I know there's a lot we didn't. So anything else that's kind of like a takeaway?
I think come to the workshops. You'll learn a lot of techniques. Crudités are a great way to kind of have an Eat Fit option. If you want to kind of have a regular cheese board and then a healthy option, I feel like you can have the best of both worlds there, but also, an Eat Fit board. Like we said, you're not missing out on anything with, burrata, mozzarella, goat cheese.
And as you said, ricotta's having a moment.
Yeah, ricotta is having a moment for sure.
And you said earlier to me, really, because when I was saying, hey, let's talk about different pitfalls, you were like, you know what? Just have fun with it.
Right.
And
that's kind of what I try to teach in my classes. No one is going to mess up. Everyone at the end of the class is blown away by how beautiful the board looks. And it's about being creative and having fun. So, I teach a bow tie at a Manchego in the class. If you want to make a teepee instead, which has happened and I was blown away, that's great. And it'll come out and it'll be beautiful and it'll be so much fun, So it's about just using that creative aspect. And you really can't mess it up.
And going into it with just whatever's going to come out onto the platter comes out, because sometimes we have these preconceived ideas of what we want it to be like. And maybe that isn't what happens, but what does land on that platter is going to be beautiful and delicious.
Right. And, people are going to eat it. So when that rose, like we talked about, gets, messed up by somebody pulling that piece out of there, it's okay.
Right.
People are there to eat, and that's kind of the point.
Right.
So don't worry so much about what it looks like. I know, that's the goal, but it's really there to be eaten and to have fun.
Right. To celebrate. This is awesome. Thank you so much, Kendall.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
A tremendous thank you to Kendall for carving time out to come join us to talk through not only what makes a charcuterie or crudité board nutritious and give us those ingredient ideas, but also how to make it so beautiful as well. And I knew there was a lot I didn't know. I didn't realize there was just so much that I was lacking in that space. So I can't wait to try out some of the tips that she shared. And she also wants to offer listeners 10% off. So if you let her know that you heard about Plattered NOLA through this podcast, she'll do 10% off with those Eat Fit platters. And it is platterdnola@gmail.com. Again, I'll include the links that we talked about, her contact information, the Instagram, Facebook links for Plattered NOLA, also the link to our WGNO segment. So you can have some of the visuals for all the stuff that we talked about. I'll include the links for that in the show notes of this episode, and always let me know what you think. As you try this, you try it out through this holiday season or anytime throughout the year, let me know how it turns out. If you have your own tips, things that have worked really well for you, we always want to hear about that as well. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. If you'd like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.